Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video Core Pick live stream for today, June 20th. It's Tuesday. We got 11 game main slate going on. If you are brand new, join me for the very first time. First of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is kind of the format that I do use on the daily basis. Going over a recap of yesterday's picks, going over a little bit of weather report, looking at the game, see if there's any potential weather spots for the day. Then going over to my core picks on FanDuel, talking about one pitcher, four hitters in general, based on recent history, past history, a combination of both, or guys that just kind of stand out, maybe like a gut feeling or anything else like that. Those ones are a little bit more rare, but typically have some numbers to back those up just in general. Don't have to play all five together, but just kind of five names that I want to highlight for the day overall. And then last but not least, going over to my cheat sheet. It's up on Facebook. It's up on YouTube, community tab. It's up on Twitter. 100% free, so definitely be sure to check that out. Going over the top stacks for today overall. And then last but not least, if you're interested in some more in-depth notes, be sure to check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sport. Hitter versus pitcher matchups. Taking a look at the pitchers on every day, whether or not I would avoid them, consider them a risky play or in play in general. And then maybe some additional stacks that didn't fit in the cheat sheet overall. But without further ado, we'll get started with a recap of yesterday's picks. If you guys do have any questions at any point in time, feel free to drop them in the live chat if you're watching live. If you're watching on replay, leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible as well. But in terms of yesterday, a little bit of messy day. So we had Corbin Burns at $10,600, had been pitching pretty well, had 52 points versus Arizona earlier this season, had decent history versus them. Kind of imploded yesterday, 5 innings, 8 hits, 7 runs, only 3 strikeouts. So he only got 3 points, so he was an obvious miss yesterday. Hopefully you guys got on a little bit better pitching. But a lot of these slates this year definitely do recommend mixing and matching a lot of these pitchers, especially when there's multiple guys that have decent matchups or where there's a lot of not so much history, which is going to be more the case today. Then we move down to first base with Carlos Santana. Previously had very good history versus Drew Smiley. Hit a home run versus him earlier this season, $3,000. Ended up going 0 for 4 yesterday, so that was unfortunate. So he got to 0 points, so he was a miss as well. And then Manny Machado at $3,200. Only getting 3 points out of him, 1 for 5 on the day. I'm going to call that one a miss as well. So not anybody that really killed, but at the same time, not anybody that helped us by any means. Then we got down to Juan Soto at $3,500. Got to 40.4 points. He ended up hitting 2 home runs yesterday. Was the second outfielder in terms of scoring yesterday, third overall hitter. So very good play there. Was kind of the lone bright spot on yesterday. So if you had him with a decent pitcher, you still had a decent chance of cashing. And then we had Andrew McCutchen, $3,100. Got to 9 points. So to give him a push, he had 2 walks and a single yesterday. So not anybody that really put our lineup over the top, but not anybody that hurt at the same time. So a little bit unfortunate day yesterday. You're going to have that sometimes with baseball, especially. But, at the end of the day, hoping to have more bad days than good days. And, kind of mix and matching on these slates helps to do that as well. But with that being said, let's stop sharing this screen. We'll go over to RotoWire real quick and take a look at the weather for today's games. There's only like 3 that have a little bit of chance of rain. Doesn't look like anything major at this point in time. So we're going to scroll down a little bit here. So we got 24% chance of rain in Washington. Probably not anything that's going to cause any major concerns. 21% chance of rain in Cleveland. And then I believe Cincinnati, 37% chance of rain. Obviously was worse looking last night and they still ended up playing. So not any major concerns with these games. Maybe a potential delay, but nothing else major. If anything does change with that throughout the day, we'll leave it down in the comments as an update as well. But with that being said, you can stop sharing this screen. We'll get over to FanDuel and talk about the core picks that I do have for today. So at the pitcher position, there is a lot of viable options today. I'm going to say that first of all, whether you want to play Dylan Cease, who has good history versus Texas Rangers. I have Bailey Ober in my cheat sheet, Garrett Cole. So those are the 3 that are actually in my cheat sheet. Clayton Kershaw looks pretty good. Framber Valdez has pretty good history versus the Mets. There's a lot of good quality options on today's slate overall. So definitely recommend mixing and matching them, playing a little bit of game depending on where their ownership looks to be projected coming in as well. But for me, I started off the day with Garrett Cole at $10,600, averaging about 38 fantasy points per game on the season. Going against Seattle, a team that has struck out quite a bit this season. Garrett Cole in his 2 starts versus Seattle last year, 49 points and 24 points. If we get that 49 points out of him, a little bit of a reduced price tag today would be very good for him overall. So don't have too many concerns with him. Seems like a pretty solid, safe play. Probably seems like another pretty safe play at the high end. But a lot of different ways that you could approach this slate. Like I said, I had Dylan Cease the last time, has pretty good history versus Texas. He's going to be a pretty appealing option, and one that I think is probably going to go a little bit under owned as compared to, what he would be on other slates. But the price tag's still pretty nice, and people are thinking those Rangers bats are still pretty nice as well. Then we're going to move down to, this is one that doesn't have the greatest recent history. I'm going to say that flat out. So if you don't want to play him, no fault whatsoever in that. But we have Matt Carpenter. He is $2,600. He is 13 for 29 with 4 home runs in his career versus Anthony Descalfani, who is starting for the Giants today. So some pretty good history there. Only averaging just under 7 fantasy points per game. The underlying stats this year are not very good. 181 average, 4 home runs, 26 RBIs. But, some of that past history versus Descalfani is going to make him pretty appealing. Kind of in and out of the lineup, uses kind of a more of a situational hitter for Matt Carpenter here. We'll see what ends up happening. He's obviously got to make sure he's in the actual starting lineup before we play him either way. But got to mention there, another guy at the same position that does have really good history today is Jose Abreu versus Justin Verlander's, like 19 for 49 with 6 home runs versus him. But another guy that's kind of struggled to start the season, although he did hit about like 3 home runs last week. So kind of starting to right the ship there. If you want to go with like an Astro stack, could be an interesting option today too. Then we're going to move down to second base with Nico Horner. He is $3,400, averaging about 11 fantasy points per game on the season. Going against Johan Oviedo today of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He is 5 for 7 versus him in his career. Don't really like the Cubs stack. I think it's a middle of the road stack today. But I think there's a couple interesting hitters that have hit Oviedo pretty well in the past that are worth consideration of playing today. 2 of those did end up in my core picks. So like I said, Nico Horner, 5 for 7 versus Oviedo in his career. He's hitting 283, 4 home runs, 35 RBIs on the season, averaging about 11 fantasy points per game. He's been doing pretty well as of late too, so not too much concern there for Horner. He's a guy that's going to get a lot of hits for you, not going to hit for a lot of power. Doesn't steal a ton of bases, although he did steal a base for Oviedo earlier this year too. So maybe if we can get a little bit of power or a stolen base out of him, enough to put him over the edge, but we're looking for at least a multi-hit game out of Nico Horner today. And then as we keep moving down, we got that other Cubs hitter that I did mention there, and Ian Happ at $3,100. Another guy that's hit Oviedo really well in the past, 6 for 13 versus him, including some decent history this year. So do you like that matchup in general? Ian Happ, 259 average, 5 home runs, 33 RBIs on the season, averaging just under 10 fantasy points per game at $3,100. A little bit of a down year for him. Hopefully some of that power starts to come around, hopefully even today against Oviedo, which remains to be seen. He's been a hit or miss pitcher this year. That sliders have really helped him out, at least early on in the season, but he's kind of went back down to earth, regressed a little bit at that too. So the start versus the Pirates, or the start versus the Cubs this year, wasn't as good. He had one good start versus them last year, so we'll mention that. But, Ian Happ, we're seeing a little over 11 last 3 games, so that is not something we're looking forward to. But, before that, had some pretty good stretches. He's a little guy that's a little bit more hit or miss, a little bit higher upside, but a little bit lower downside at that same time. Then if you really want to go like Cubs stacked, probably the third hitter that I would mention for those Cubs is going to be Christopher Morel. You can play him at third base or outfield. He's $3,800. Also a little bit of a hefty price tag, but those would be the 3 guys that had the best history versus Oviedo in the past. They were not one of those teams that did end up in my stack. So that's why I'm kind of mentioning it here at this point in time. And then last but not least, we're getting to Juan Soto. He's still at $3,500. Obviously played him yesterday. Obviously he had the 2 home run game. So he's probably going to be pretty popular today going against Descalfani. He is 2 for 9 in his career versus him. So not the greatest history in the past, but we see the 256 average, 13 home runs, 36 RBIs, averaging about 12 fantasy points per game at $3,500. Obviously, like I said, coming off that big game where he was 0 for before that, probably going to draw some more ownership today. But at this price tag, don't really have too many problems getting to him once again. If you're going with that San Diego Padres stack, obviously Juan Soto and Matt Carpenter makes some sense there. And Trent Grisham's a guy that does have good history versus Descalfani, which we'll get into here in a minute as we get over to the top stacks. But with that being said, if you end up going with these 5 players that I do have listed here, you have $11,800 remaining, just over $2,900 per player. So maybe potential to pay up for one other player, pay down just a couple other different spots. Or if you want to go with a little bit more balanced build or pay down at the pitcher position, could open up some other options as well. But with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing that screen. We're going to go over to the YouTube community tab, bottom half of my cheat sheet for today, and talk about the top GPP teams to stack for today. Not sure why that was so hard to say there for a second. But the first team that I do have is the Cleveland Guardians. They are going against Luis Medina, who is the primary pitcher today. It sounds like they're going to use an opener at this point in time, probably pitching an inning or two before him. But his ERA is up over a 7 at this point in time. Cleveland, you don't think about them being the most potent offense in the world, but going against Medina should be a pretty favorable matchup there. Whether you want to play guys like Josh Naylor, Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, some of those speedy outfielders, if you want to do that. Jose Ramirez is up there, but he's at $4,000 at this point in time. So going to have to get a little bit creative there if you're playing him and Josh Naylor and maybe like Stephen Kwan, who's $3,000. Maybe pay down at pitcher. Couple different options, or you're going to have to build like a cheap end of a stack or a couple cheap one-offs here and there as well. Then we have the Cincinnati Reds. They are going against Noah Davis. They have no history versus him in the past. So not too much to be said there, but the Reds team has really been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. A lot of good quality options here, whether it's a Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, Ellie De La Cruz, has been, pretty good since he's been called up. A little bit lower as of late. He's still got that high price tag. So maybe a guy that we're fading today, but a lot of different quality options in this Reds lineup. Nick Senzel is a guy that has multi-positional versatility, so he fits in pretty well. Kevin Newman, if he hits leadoff once again, is going to be a pretty appealing option. Then we move over to the Diamondbacks. They're going against Colin Rea. Not really any history here, or very, very limited history. I think it's just Nick Ahmed who's got like 1 for 2 versus him in his career. So a little bit of mystery to be unseen there. Could go a little bit of either way, but do like stacking some of those Diamondbacks bats today. I believe Alec Thomas was just recently brought back. He had a home run yesterday, so maybe he's a cheap bat that we can go after today. And then last but not least, those Padres that I did start talking about a little bit before, Juan Soto. Matt Carpenter, who has the good history versus Descalfani in his career. If you want to throw Trent Grisham in there, who has a good history as well. If you want to mix in Xander Bogaerts, any other options out there, definitely can do that on today's slate. So a lot of different options that we can go from in terms of stacking. It should be a pretty interesting slate in general. Like I said, not a lot of history here for these pitcher versus hitter matchups. So notes are a little bit more limited today than they would be in general for Patreon, but makes it a pretty interesting slate, a good slate to mix and match and just kind of see what ends up happening overall. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have at this point in time. If you guys do have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, be sure to let me know your favorite play on today's slate, whether it's someone from our core 5 picks, whether it's somebody from my top stacks, or whether it's a completely different player that you guys think I missed. Definitely interested in hearing what you have to say. But with that being said, that's pretty much all that I do have at this point in time. If there's any changes weather-wise, we'll leave it down in the comments. We'll leave as many starting lineups as I can get to down there as well. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time or yet to subscribe, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Greg Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Mainly it's MLB DFS and USFL DFS at this point in time. USFL DFS video will be dropping on Friday, doing some snap counts as we speak for that. So if that's something you're into, definitely be sure to check that out as well. Before we get out of here, going to do a couple little quick promo reads here. So if you are interested in sports betting, a little bit of parlay building sites, you can use referral code Coach Craig when you sign up at Parlay Play. That is an app. So that especially if you're in states that sports gambling is not legal already, see if Parlay Play or Price Picks is legal in your state. Use Coach Craig when you sign up at Parlay Play. 100% first match deposit up to $100. Helps you guys out a little bit, helps me out as well. And then if you're interested in Prize Picks, this is the promo code you can use over there. Same type of thing. First match deposit up to 100% or up to $100, So definitely a couple different options. If you have any questions in regards to Prize Picks or Parlay Play, feel free to message me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. But with that being said, that's really all that I do have at this point in time. Hopefully each and every one of you have a great rest. But with that being said, that's pretty much all that I do have at this point in time. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you got a little bit of information as you're building out your lineups for today. And then with that being said, definitely hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.